Random thoughts. In this video, I'm going to read part of Douglas Jardine's book, The Mad Mullah. This is a book about Mohammed Abdullah Hassan. This is a book that was published in 1920s. And Jardine, or Douglas Jardine, was what was known as the secretary to the administration Somaliland between 1916 and 1921. He was technically second in command in Somaliland when Somaliland was a colony of the British. And in this book, of course, he's telling the story of Mohammed Abdullah Hassan, but we are in the very first chapter where he gives us the basic information, the background information. He's building for us the backdrop before he starts telling us the story of Mohammed Abdullah Hassan. And some of the things he tells us in this first chapter, he tells us about the history of the land, the people of the land, the geography, and things like that. And there is something I read in this chapter, part of this chapter, that I found to be very interesting. And he talks about Berberah, Bulhar, and Zayla, and Las Korai. These are towns at the coast of what was then the British Somaliland. And he tells us that these were like the more permanent, or the most permanent towns of the colony, which they found. These were very ancient cities or towns. They were there when the British arrived. But he mentions something, and if you watch my videos, you know we've been reading Richard Barton's book, First Steps in East Africa, Exploration of Harar, where he discusses some of these towns, especially Zayla and Berberah. Now, Jardine tells us that these towns were permanent, but they were almost the only ones that were permanent. There were a few, like Hargeisa, in the interior, but they were not as permanent as these coastal towns. But then he says something that I found to be very, very interesting about how these towns were maintained, which is impressive. And this is what he says. The only permanent towns of any size are Berberah, Bulhar, Zayla, and Las Horai at the coast, with the chosen representatives of each clan repair from time to time, but particularly between September and March, to retail their sheep, goats, and oxen, and hides and skins, and to purchase with the proceeds rice from India, dates from Basra, and cotton cloth from Manchester or America or Japan. So he says there are these coastal towns, and they were the permanent ones. And remember, and he does explain this in this book, that the Somali people are people who, of course, they move from one place to another. They are nomadic people, and they move around with their livestock. That's their way of life. And but they used to have these permanent towns. Now, this is the interesting part about this, is that each clan will provide people who will go and repair the town, especially between September and March. And there is a reason between September and March. If you watch my videos when we were reading Richard Barton's book, he explains that there used to be a trade fair that happened during that time. So they needed to have the town taken care of, or kept in good condition, of course, for trade and commerce. So what I found to be very interesting is that there was an organization, or there was a structure in place, that each clan will provide a few people who will go and participate in maintaining these permanent cities, even as the rest of the people were moving around the land as nomads, of course. I found that to be very interesting. Those are my random thoughts.